meeting, and first up on the schedule is the Sheriff's Office, and then that will be followed immediately by Community Corrections. So we're trying to do this in about 50% presentation and 50% time for Q&A, and you guys have about 45 minutes for your part of it, and then another half hour for Community Corrections. And we're doing really well on time, so if there are a lot of questions, then we'll take that into consideration. Thank you. Go ahead.
You ready to go? Okay, sorry. I missed that cue. Sorry, Chair Parks.
Oh, that's okay.
Good morning, Chair Parks and Budget Committee members. I'm Sheriff Angela Brandenburg. Joining me today at the table is Chief Deputy Jenna Morrison and my Finance Manager, Nancy Artman. Before I present the Sheriff's Office budget, I want to say thank you to the Board of County Commissioners and to County Administrator Schmidt for your support of my leadership over this past year. I believe that our partnerships have grown, and that strengthens our service to the citizens of those that we serve. I also want to acknowledge the work of my Finance Manager, Nancy Artman, and her team, as well as County Finance Director Elizabeth Comfort and her team for all the hard work they did preparing this year's budget. Thank you. And importantly, I want to thank our community for their continued support of public safety and for approving and increasing our public safety levy to provide enhanced law enforcement operations. In this fiscal year, the public will begin seeing the benefits of that levy with the addition of 16 patrol deputies, 5 detectives, 6 jail deputies, and a fully implemented body-worn camera program. My office and my deputies are deeply grateful for the support we receive from our community. When I took office, I committed to providing transparency. Early on, I worked with the county internal auditor to complete a financial condition report for the Sheriff's Office. The report provided me with a baseline for where the Sheriff's Office budget is. It showed that we are in line with the overall county budget and that personnel expenses are slightly outpacing revenue. The report is on our website. When I took office, I also wanted to conduct a strategic analysis of public safety needs in Clackamas County. I wanted to better understand the delivery of services and placement of staffing resources in our growing county. I want to thank County Administrator Schmidt again for his assistance in getting this accomplished. Earlier this month, I presented the staffing study to the Board of County Commissioners, which I think you all probably have seen. It's also available on our website. The good news is that the levy will provide 29 positions that are in line with the recommendations of the staffing study to meet service delivery demands. To further meet critical staffing needs, County Administrator Schmidt also approved the addition of 6 jail deputies to our proposed budget before you today. This is a great outlook for the future of public safety in Clackamas County. This year, past year has not been without challenges. As COVID-19 swept through our communities, my deputies and staff continued to work in person serving the citizens of Clackamas County. They continue to show their resiliency each and every day. And at this time of nationwide law enforcement attrition, law enforcement agencies continue to face recruiting challenges. Even so, Clackamas County continues to be an employer of choice, in part because of our community and leaders who support public safety. Despite the labor market, in this past year, we have hired over 39 employees, 29 of those in deputy positions. So committee members, it is important to me to be a collaborative partner, and I look forward to our continued work together. And I would like to present the 22-23 Sheriff's Office budget. So our major accomplishments this year, I'm not going to go through all of these for the sake of time, so we have plenty of time for questions. As I said, we've hired 39 employees this last year. 29 of those were deputy positions. We hired a school resource officer. A school resource officer was added to the Adrian C. Nelson High School, which is part of our contract. We are working to add a behavioral health specialist to respond in Wilsonville with Wilsonville deputies to improve a mental health response there. That's provided by our contract in Wilsonville. We are working on implementing our body-worn camera program to increase officer safety, strengthen evidence for cases, and increase trust and transparency within our community. And that will be fully implemented here in the not-too-distant future. We passed the public safety levy to provide enhanced services to Clackamas County. We had one of the largest, or the largest fentanyl seizure in the history of Oregon with the work of our CCITF drug team. And we have public-facing dashboards that allow our community to see our calls for service, which are updated about every 30 days. That's available on our website. Soon we will have crimes that are reported for your community, and that will also be on our website, public-facing dashboard. And then we also launched an online reporting platform that is available for folks who want to not call in. They want to report no suspect, low crimes. It's an option, it's not a requirement. And the jail, we navigated COVID-19 with no major outbreaks, thanks to the jail, all of our staff there. And then we implemented a rapid forensic evaluation assessment program also at the jail to reduce those who are waiting for evaluations before they can continue with their court cases. That went from 27 days to 6 days, which is phenomenal. So we can get folks back out of the jail and into the community. We also partnered with the Clackamas County Juvenile Department and Strategies for Youth to bring policing the teen brain to promote positive interactions through proven de-escalation techniques. That training has been rolling out here, and it's been fantastic. So I will next give you to Chief Deputy Jenna Morrison.
Hi. So these are performance Clackamas measures. We've had our strategic business plan in place since 2020, and we've been collecting data, and we're actually about to kind of relook at our strategic business plan because some of the measures that we came up with are a little wonky, and so we want to make some changes.
Jenna, would you speak in the mic, please?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. So to go along with, these are just a few of our measures. Our administration and operational support, one of our measures is percentage of positions filled. Our actual number in 2020 was 96.4, and last year was 92.5. So we are continuing our recruitment efforts. Our FJC survey respondents also, we had a goal of 95%, and we surpassed that by 99.3%. Our goal is 100% this year. Our target is 100 or 95%, and last year it was 100%. Apologize. So the last two are a little bit strange. These are the percent change measures. And so we look at the percent change from quarter to quarter, and then we compare 1 year to the next. And so for example, our traffic enforcement, the percent change in fatalities that resulted from crashes occurring on county roadways in 2020 was 92.5. We had a target of -10, and it went up by 131%, but that is not to say that we had a 131% increase. It's a percent change. So in actuality, we had 9 fatalities in 2020 and 13 in 2021. And same with the jail. These percent change measures, like I said, they're a little bit difficult to make sense of. We've had a huge increase in forced releases due to COVID, so from 2020 to 2021. And our actual numbers we went from 534 to 1,604. Now that COVID has hopefully kind of moved along and the jail is opening up more, those numbers should go down. And that's really unfortunate because the jail has worked really hard over the years prior to COVID to really get those forced releases down. So, next slide. So our program profiles, this is kind of just an overall general measure of our metrics. The majority of actually I think all of our programs fall in line with the county commissioner's strategic plan, or strategic goal number 4, which is safe and healthy communities. Okay, next slide. Okay. Done? Yep. Okay.
Good morning. For the record, Nancy Artman, Sheriff's Finance Manager. What I would like to do, because there's a lot of detail here, is go over the next few slides at a high level. And I'm certainly happy to entertain any questions in detail that you might have once we get to the end of the presentation. I think that might be the best use of time in order to allow for your specific questions. If that sounds good to you, Chair Parks, I will proceed. So on slide 7.7, which is before you now, this is a depiction of all FTE and funding by the different sources of the Sheriff's Office. I would like to remind you that today's presentation will not include the ELED. It is the Sheriff's Operation Fund, which is under Fund 100, and the levy. Two things that I would like to point out on this slide. One is that there was a bit of a miscommunication when we were building the budget. We are short 5 positions for the levy, and they're not reflected in the FTE count. So we've been in communication with the budget office and were instructed that our remedy for that is to bring it forth to you today and to make the formal request that 5 additional positions be added to the levy. It would take us from 489 FTE to 494 FTE. These are 100% levy funded, and the funds are available in the new public safety to local option levy. Those 5 positions are 2 deputy recruits and 3 jail deputy recruits. The total additional cost is $587,626.15. Secondly, I'd like to point out the asterisk number 2 at the bottom, and just speak a little bit generally about us being in Fund 100. So historically, this has been referred to as the County General Fund, Fund 100. While we do receive general fund support, we are not solely a general fund department, and you'll note that approximately 50% of the revenue that is in Fund 100 comes from other sources. So I just want to make that distinction that we do have other revenue, and those do include restricted revenues as well within Fund 100. So this pie depiction of revenue and expense is a roll-up, again, of all levy and Fund 100 monies and expenses. And I do appreciate the budget office taking that in the further slides and then splitting that apart so we can talk about how that looks with Fund 100 specifically and then with the levy specifically. And I think that makes a difference, and it's important to our discussion today because there are so many changes for the Sheriff's Office this year budgetarily. 1, we have the new chart of accounts. 2, this is our full implementation of an MFR budget format. So you're going to see a lot of things that look a little bit peculiar. There might be big spikes in some categories and big decreases in other categories. And that's the result of 2 factors. 1, we're aligning people and the costs for services where they belong within the MFR programs. And secondarily, it also factors in the levy, which accounts for a significant increase. Thank you. So again, this is the slide that is rolled up to include the levy. So it is a bit askew when we look at the total for the Sheriff's Office in terms of what is Fund 100, what is specifically general fund support, what is other operating revenue, and then what part is attributed to the levy. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this slide because I will go over in a little bit more detail the next 2 slides. The one thing that I would like to point out is at the bottom of the page, the full-time equivalent positions budgeted. You'll find that in the second column, second to last column on the right, and this is tab 7.9. It notes an increase of 28 positions. Those are 22 belonging to the levy and 6 belonging to the jail. Those do not factor in the additional 5, which we would like you to consider today. Okay, so this is Fund 100. This does not include any levy dollars. A lot of the changes that are represented here, as I mentioned, are a factor of we've got new account names. We have things built in that are grouped together in a way that they haven't traditionally been grouped together. And there are some increases and decreases in both revenue and expense. So I'd like to walk you through this a little bit. And I will try to do it quickly. And again, I'm happy to answer more questions in detail, just in the interest of time. Our federal, state, and local revenue, that is amended grant funds and forfeiture dollars that just aren't coming in. So we do have a lot of cases. Our team has been working really diligently, and we're just waiting for some cases to clear at the federal level. So we do anticipate that revenue will go up. We just wanted to depict it in keeping with spirit of the request from the budget office of just stating revenue at a base level, and if more revenue should come in, then we could add it back into our budget. So we're just trying to be as conservative as possible with both revenue and expense in kind. The charges for services or charges, fees, licenses, and permits, this includes the funding for the city contracts with Estacada, Happy Valley, and Wilsonville. You'll note that there's a significant increase there, 7.2%. And what that is that we built the budgets this year within the MFR programs so that they reflect the actual cost of the city conducting business. So that wasn't the case last year. We took it as, this is year one, we're trying to build this MFR budget. What is that going to look like? And it had more of the base types of things such as personnel. This year includes materials and services, it includes contracted amounts, it includes everything that it costs to run those city programs. Those costs basically were, in the past, offset. So we took in revenue, it posted in patrol and in investigations, and it offset costs. Those costs aren't additional. Those were costs that were already within our budget, but we reduced this year, and you'll see if you were to look at some of those more specific areas, we reduced patrol materials and services, we reduced investigations materials and services, and that's not to say their budgets were reduced. That cost was transferred into the cities. And I spent just a little bit more time on this particular item because it seemed like there were a lot of questions surrounding the city contracts. Other items of significance, you'll note an 81% change in other interfund transfers. That is where we received the ARPA lost revenue dollars that the board was kind enough to approve for us for this year. On the expenditure side, I'd like to note a 1.5% decrease in personnel costs. That might seem a bit peculiar. There are several factors at play. One is that we have a seasoned workforce that is getting to the point of retirement, and we're replacing some with lateral employees, but a lot of recruits are coming in whose overall personnel costs are not as high. The last 2 fiscal years, we were instructed to reduce our overtime costs within our budget. We weren't able to build any back in for this year, so we have a pretty stagnant overtime budget, save for the levy. So please recall that those are separate and distinct. It also includes things such as temporary employees, vacation sellback, anything that touches personnel. We heard the board last year in this budget committee state that reduction of temporary employees was a priority. We have gone through our budget and looked at those that are critical and that make business sense. For instance, our range training officers in the Public Safety Training Center, because they work minimal and they do specialized classes, it makes sense that we keep them on as temporary employees. There are a couple positions that we deemed are critical for the sheriff's office operations, and we did convert one this fiscal year to a full-time position and are looking perhaps to do that next year as well. So we are keeping a watchful eye. But all of those changes roll together to represent that negative 1.5%. Materials and services are increased costs for, basically we have deferred maintenance we haven't been able to do, outfitting costs for vehicles, replacement of vehicles, and technological updates to keep us aligned rather with body-worn cameras and also the in-car cameras. I do want to point out, you might have noticed this fiscal year that cost allocations are also rolled into materials and services. So there is not a separate cost allocation line, so it does give a little bit of an artificial increase to materials and services because they are now part of that category. Let's see, and the other thing that I want to touch on is the ending fund balance, which rolls into our beginning fund balance. Those are restricted dollars, which do include grants, forfeiture dollars, alarm permit fees that are restricted per code, and things of that nature. Quickly to go through the levy, and we can answer more questions again. I'm sorry, I haven't been as quick as I am trying to be, but there's a lot to cover. You will see noted there a $1.7 million fund balance and then a corresponding $1.7 million beginning fund balance. We really were trying to be mindful of the overall need for beginning cash because we're not going to receive the new funds from the higher rate of tax until November at the earliest. And then we also were keeping in line with the county's policy regarding revenue contingency and reserve. And that I'd like to point down to you, and I think this is the most critical item because that might be a number that leaps off the page at you. If you go to the bottom of the shaded gray column, right before the total expense total, you'll notice contingency in the amount of $4.8 million. There are several reasons that that is there. One is that we have a much higher tax rate. This is year one. So we need to determine what is our base going to look like for the levy. So we built in a really robust budget for each of the different sections that are funded by the levy. And we're taking a really close look this year, again, in the spirit of not overstating expenses and knowing that we have corresponding revenue, we're trying to be good stewards of those funds. And additionally, as we go on in time, that tax base rate will remain the same, but all of our costs, this is not new information to you, will continue to rise. So we will be using that contingency year over year, and you can expect that to decrease, not to increase. I'll turn it back over to Sheriff Brandenburg to close this part of the discussion, and then we'll be happy to address any of your questions.
So our significant policy and financial issues, one, the Family Justice Center continues to serve individuals and families fleeing abuse. Since 2018, reported crimes of domestic violence in Clackamas County have gone up 29%. And so the corresponding need for client fundings, people leave, they flee, oftentimes with the things that they have, with limited resources. So we're always taking a look to see if we can continue to seek various avenues for funding to help those folks out that come and seek assistance from the Family Justice Center. So civil, in anticipating that we may have a new courthouse, just keeping this on the radar, that staffing for that courthouse facility, which we've had many talks with all of you, continues to be a priority. If that courthouse goes through, that we will need additional folks for that. So, and then the jail, that's nothing new. I know that there is a commitment by this board to fund a new jail facility. So thank you very much. Want to leave plenty of time for questions.
Okay, Commissioner Smith?
Thank you. Thank you for this very well considered budget. I appreciate the effort that you and Finance Department has gone into setting one of the board's priorities, which is public safety. Some items have popped out at me. You mentioned in your report over 1,600 jail releases in 1 year. Now, regardless of the reason for that, what is the societal impact when you release 1,600 people who've been arrested, I assume, for crimes?
Well, the jail has to determine who's the worst of the worst, quite frankly. So we have metrics that we look at, and we determine based on that. There's only so much room. And our jail it hasn't met our needs since 2020. And we need a new jail facility that can accommodate the size of our county.
I guess I'm going to rephrase the question, Angie, and I love your answer. But when those people are taken from jail prematurely and let back out into society, what's the recidivism rate on that? What are they doing? I mean, I assume that they were in jail for a reason.
They are in jail for a reason. Would you like?
Good. Yeah, gentlemen, thank you.
We'll bring up an
Ah.
expert.
Good morning, Board.
Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, is your microphone on, Lee?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, I'm Captain Levy. I'm the jail commander here in Clackamas County. So the question is specifically is what is the impact for those? There's an overall impact across the system. Many of those do not show up for court. We have failed to appears. We have some of those that do reoffend. Currently, this last year, our recidivism rate is about 73%. So 73% of the people that are arrested have been in our facility at some time during their life. So there is an impact overall to the whole system. What is the specifics as to crime rates? I don't think anybody can say that for specifics, but we do know that we do see an impact financially on the system because they have to go through the whole process again and again and again. And so there is a cost to the system.
Can I add on to that, if I
Yes.
may? Thank you. I guess I can. I'm the chair. I can do that. Whatever. So I'm curious about what the capacity of the jail is and what it actually has been, let's say, in an average. Can you just kind of project
Over what
that?
period of time? Are we talking the last year or?
Yeah, I mean, like, how many people can you house?
So the jail at maximum capacity is 491.
Right, but you've had a lot more than that in there at different times, right?
Historically, yes. We've always
Yeah.
usually been well over 500. Obviously, the last few years with COVID, you've seen a lot less movement by the population, so we've seen a lot less intakes. We've restricted some of them during that time. But historically speaking, we are on average about 15,000 a year booked in. About 9 to 10,000 individuals. Some of those are repeat offenders.
Mm-hmm.
And then as time has gone on, as the sheriff mentioned with the matrix study, they're predicting that we need, 721, I believe, bed facility by
2035.
2035. So, they're looking at our population. They looked at historical data based on what we've seen prior to COVID. COVID kind of just changed everything for everybody. Everything, economy, time, everything just changed. But we looked at historical data, and we know that the jail is not at the capacity for our population in Clackamas County.
Okay, thank you.
Can I
Go
continue?
ahead, yes.
Yeah, thank you. So what I am to conclude from your statement, 73% recidivism rate, plus the failure to appear on many levels, that is a huge criminal impact to society, in that they keep going out and being more bad guys, right? And then we have more population growing. We have pressures from our county to the north, to our wonderful sister to the north. I'm not pointing out the government up there. I'm just pointing out all the uprisings and riots we've seen. And it's just compounding factor in that, is a statement I'm going to make. My next question, your materials and service budget. Included in that, is that the outfitting of the deputies? And I believe I asked a question, and Angie's prepared to answer that last time around. And so you're bringing on these new deputies, correct? There's additional cost to that. There's an additional vehicle cost to that.
Correct.
Is that presented in this budget?
It is, and those that are specific to the levy are budgeted within the levy. So you'll notice it's comprehensive in terms of uniform costs, equipment, vehicles, vehicle outfitting. Anything that is needed for those positions is located within the levy budget and will be funded by the levy.
Okay, and then I think Angie's prepared for this question because I asked it last time you were here. It's no big deal.
I have it.
Whoever wants to answer it. So you bring on a new recruit, and the sheriff's department supplies them with a certain amount of gear, uniform, et cetera, however you guys want to phrase that, just correct me, okay? Is the new recruit responsible for buying their own? Are your existing deputies also having to pay for items that is not budgeted for?
So new recruits do pay for some of their items. A firearm, they purchase their own firearm, some of their own gear. I don't have that specific. You have that information, I believe. But I can tell you that for a patrol deputy, what we pay for assigned equipment and uniform costs is $14,610 per recruit patrol deputy. That does not include the vehicle. which the vehicles are about $57,844. And then in-house training costs, because you talked about training as well. We invest almost $53,000 in training in that first 18 months. And that's in-house. And then for jail deputies, assigned equipment and uniform costs is $3,414. And in-house training costs is $57,491. And that's the first 18 months, that's the training cycle of a brand-new recruit.
That is tremendous, and no reason why you're so picky about your initial hires. You want them to be good people, you want them to stay around, because this is an incredible investment in your personnel, but I believe it's really needed. And I want to thank you for doing your due diligence in your hiring process, and we've talked about that privately before. Madam Chair, that's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Savas and then Mr. Karn.
Yeah, great. Nancy, did you get that population number for ELED? I know we're not talking about ELED today, but I have a related question to that.
Commissioner, we weren't able to get a population number, but we have number of parcels in the ELED, and I can share that with you.
Okay, I won't be able to do any kind of a comparison then. All right, well, let's just forego that then. Related to this discussion we're having now, I have another question, but I was just piggybacking on the conversation we're having. I'd love to know, and I don't want to put you on the spot, I'd love to have the numbers in the future, but I'd like to know how much capacity you would gain at the jail, for example, if there was a place to take people that had a mental health issue that really didn't belong in jail, and also for drug and alcohol, right?
Drug and alcohol also?
Yeah.
Mental health, you're talking probably about 18 to 20%.
Okay.
Drug and alcohol, that's a tough one, because those numbers of people involved in those range up in the 80s to 90 percentile of some kind of alcohol or drug addiction. So we'd have to really vet what you're talking about, because obviously we have individuals who commit felony crimes that are under the influence that you wouldn't want to release. So that wouldn't necessarily save us bed space. But mental health-wise, yeah, there's a considerable amount of space that would be saved if there was a alternative location for officers to take somebody.
Right. And, I'm hearing also from other public safety, like fire folks, number one, needing a place to take people, right? Because there's no arrest needed, but they have no place to take them, but that they're staffing up and they're using their resources, which is unusual compared to 10 years ago, now for having dedicated staff for homeless and dedicated means of trying to help them. And I'm even hearing nationwide, perhaps even some of them even offering shelter at the fire stations. So what I'm saying here is, this is really not an answer for you, what I'm saying here is that there's a pent-up need that is burdening a lot of public agencies and our dollars, and it's really not getting them the compassionate help, the health issues that they need, and it's not getting addressed. It's adding a burden which is impeding your ability, our ability, to prosecute the real bad guys that are creating the crimes and creating the havoc and allowing you to do your jobs. And that goes for, again, fire responders as well as others. So that said, getting back to page 11 of tab 7. And you spoke about it a little bit, but Nancy, I know you have a very complicated budget. You have a lot of stuff in there. We've gone over that before. So, but can you give me a breakdown of? I'm seeing here on page 11 and on page 10, materials and services ranging from 21.4% on page 10 increase up to 57% on page 11. Can you just give me a thumbnail sketch of why it's that high?
Certainly. So it correlates partially to our capital outlay. So the corresponding amounts to outfit a vehicle show up in materials and services. So those are all the parts, the lights, the sirens, everything that goes into the vehicle. And we came before the board when we discussed the in-car cameras and just explained how expensive that is to outfit a vehicle. So that is included in there. There is a significant amount of deferred maintenance that has not occurred in the jail, so we have budgeted some of that to occur during this fiscal year, and that is Captain EB has done a phenomenal job of keeping the jail operational, but as you can imagine, it is aging and it has continued needs. Also additionally, there are some technological needs, so this is specifically to our computer equipment. There needs to be some upgrades in hardware and software alike. And then it is the additional cost of conducting business. So we have gone on a really bare bones budget in materials and services. And County Administrator Schmidt and the Finance Office and this board have recognized the need to also fund our materials and services. So we have a budget at this point in time where we're fortunate that we're able to cover our personnel costs, and we are doing that without asking for additional funds. So we've been very good about living within our means. But since we're able to cover that, since we have the levy on board that fully covers its costs with the levy that the sheriff was successful in getting, we now have the means to build in some of those things that we've gone without. And it really is taking care of aging and failing equipment and getting the safety needs met for those who are out in the field conducting some of the things that they need to do that require special equipment. So it is a combination of that.
If I may.
Of course.
So there's also about $850,000 that is in there for new bunk beds at the jail that County Administrator Schmidt has allowed us to put into this proposal. So that is a big chunk of it as well.
Okay. So I do know, like you mentioned, the computers and so forth. So is that unique to other departments where it's built in allocated cost?
I'm sorry, pardon me one second.
So for example, like if in finance, they don't have their computers, I think their cost is built into the allocated cost. So they pay an allocated cost that covers that technical service. Is that correct?
Sandra, can you answer that?
For other departments or specific to the sheriff's office?
Well, I guess in this case, specific to the sheriff's
Yeah, so I
office.
can speak to that. So we do pay cost allocations for information technology. That's part of what we do pay, and that is a proportionate share based on the number of hardware units we have, and there's other factors that go into their formulary, which I am not going to profess to be able to explain here today. We pay that, but in addition to that, we pay out of pocket for our own equipment needs. So that does not get covered through our cost allocation. So we're paying one side for support and management from IT, but we do have our own IT department that manages all of those technological and software, hardware needs, making sure our servers are up to date, all of that information.
Yeah, I'm not questioning the need for it, right? I see it at $10 million, right, for 21, 22. But I'm just kind of curious about the increase, right? So it's
Correct.
it's pretty high, 57%. So, the need, so you're saying some of that is updating some prior equipment that's aged?
Some of that is that, yes, correct. So there are different factors. Again, just to reiterate, there are cost allocations, there's public safety equipment needs. As the chief deputy mentioned, there are the bunk beds in the jail, which will be transferable when there is a new jail facility. There are also...
And just for clarification, are you looking at the levy budget or are you looking at the general fund budget?
I'm looking at both. So, yeah, I last reference the 10 million and the 14 million, that was the levy. And in the, on page 10, that delta is 16 million, the 21 million. So there's a $5 million delta, or, excuse me, 3.8 million.
And so, it's a $3.8 million increase, effectively $3 million if you take out the bunks, or $2.9 million if you take out the bunks. The costs for those services, for anything public safety related, I know that you know this, Commissioner, are very steep. And we've incorporated just the basic needs at this point in time. So even though it looks considerable, it is just to cover what has either been outdated, unsafe, or in need of replacement.
Yeah. I'll just
All right, could
I'll just
we
say
have-
this, if I may just finish,
We
please.
have three others in queue, and if you have additional questions, do you mind if we come back
I
to
just
those?
want to finish on this note. It'd be
You
very
wanna finish
difficult to
on
come
this one?
back. Yeah, this is,
All right, thank you, because we do have 3 others that would like to comment.
yeah, we've got 20 minutes left. What I'm trying to really discern here is how much is actually inflationary
Right.
versus some unusual
Right.
circumstances. That's what I'm trying to get at, is
Oh,
that,
that's a-
and making
that's a
sure that it's
great
actually
question.
adequate.
No, that's a great question, Commissioner. And what we've seen prior to COVID and prior to our costs being markedly increased for the same goods is about a 5.5%, 5.75% increase year over year to goods and services. Honestly, at this point, we're very thankful that we've been able to piece together a budget that will meet those basic needs, and we are trying to live within the funding level that we received. We understand that there are some issues with general fund dollars and wanting to retain some of those dollars, as Administrator Schmidt mentioned in his opening remarks this morning. So we're trying to do the best we can and meet all of our needs while also living within the means that we are provided. So over time, do we have a need for additional funding for materials and services? Certainly. We haven't even begun to build in everything that we need to remain a cutting-edge sheriff's office. So I do appreciate your question. And then also on the levy side, this year, we'll have more data for you next year. So this year is our let's build it and see if it meets our needs, because it's new, the money is new to us. We're trying to figure out what that exact cost is to equip and maintain equipment and the capital items. So I'll have better comparative analytics for you next year. I think we're in better shape because of the success of passing the public safety local option levy, so we'll be able to meet the needs within it. But within Fund 100, looking at all of those needs, we certainly do have unmet items that we just simply don't have funding to cover.
Okay, thank you, and I'll ask a question after everyone else has got their questions answered.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, so we have 3 in queue, and then I have a question after that of the administrator. So we have Mr. Karn, Mr. Cernach, and then Mr. Rhodes. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Chair. Sheriff Brandenburg, thanks for being here today. I appreciate it, and all your staff. I know everybody here appreciates the work you do every day under difficult circumstances and a difficult time for law enforcement. So I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
As it relates to recruitment, have you seen a change in the number of applicants, both with laterals and then new recruits? Has that number gone up or down, or?
It is down. It's a challenging environment, I mean, across the board with any industry. Back in the day, when many of us were hired, we had to compete against 500, 1,000 people to enter in law enforcement. And now we are seeing less than 50 applicants at a time. We are continuously recruiting lateral and entry-level deputies. But it's challenging, and it's a sign of the times. We're having to become more resilient in how we find qualified folks, because we are not dropping our standards for hiring, but we are finding those folks. It's just a little more challenging.
Is your lateral process a continual open process?
It is, and we have streamlined that here in the last year and a half. 29 hires last year for sworn positions is unheard of. I think Commissioner Rhodes probably would agree with that. The previous year, we had hired 12.
And I'm assuming that other agencies are probably doing the same thing, trying to compete for the best candidates. So is it fair to say that most other law enforcement agencies have open lateral processes all the time?
Yes, so we are competing for the same folks across the board.
Okay. One last question. It was surprising to me, and I thought about this a while ago, but since you brought it up again, how long, and I'm surprised that deputies have to purchase their own gun. How long has that been in place?
Forever. So for Clackamas County, I think we're probably one of the few agencies that we do not purchase firearms, and it's a cost. So we limit the firearms that folks can come in to purchase because we have folks who can maintenance some of those firearms ourselves, but it's cost.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Mr.
Thanks for the
Cernak
questions.
and then Mr. Rhodes.
I've got a couple questions. One, you mentioned that your contingency number, we can expect to see decrease over time.
That's correct.
I assume you don't want to eliminate it completely so that it's there in case of, say, another fire where we've got evacuations and additional patrols. The other thing is, it sounds like you're gearing up for sometime in the next decade to talk about a new jail. I could be wrong on that. Have you thought about starting to set aside funds for that in the annual budgets?
So speaking to the contingency, first of all, correct in that it will go down. Also correct in that we will not deplete it because in this line of business, we have to have funds set aside for emergency contingent. The conversation regarding a new jail is ongoing, and that is something that I will turn to the chief deputy or the sheriff to address, or perhaps Captain Eby.
Or how about,
Actually,
How about me? Let me do that.
Yes.
So,
Administrator Schmidt.
Administrator Schmidt, please.
Budget Committee members, this is one of the Board of County Commissioners' 10 strategic results under their 5 strategic priorities by 2025. New and existing funding for the county's courthouse, jail, and law enforcement operations will be identified from federal, state, regional, and local funding sources. So we have an incredible team. We call it an implementation team of staff, including the sheriff's office, that are working on how can we fund the jail. And yes, we will do some of that internally, but there might be some external sources as well. So that's something that I'm going to do countywide, is to plan on setting aside money in the reserves for a new jail facility. With less than 10 years, I have till 3 years to figure this out with all of you. So it's coming. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
but setting aside funding and actually starting are two different.
You're correct. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes?
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to see you all. 3 parts. First, in regards to deputies purchasing their own equipment and firearms. I think I know the answer, but I'll ask. Do you think that this is a deterrent in any way in your recruiting or hiring, that the employees pay for their own equipment?
I would say yes. So some folks, they just don't have the means to purchase the equipment. We've been trying to defer that cost, pick up some things. We have some things that we have in our equipment supply closet. When we hire folks, if they can't afford some things, we have that. But yes, that it is a deterrent, I believe.
and I think, and it's also something that we've been talking about. So we've actually costed out how much it would be to purchase firearms, and do we do it for new people? Do we do it for people, all people? And so it is something we've been discussing, and it is also, as you know, we are in a union environment, and so it is something that, takes some maneuvering with the union as well.
Fair enough. The second question is in regards to the jail, adding 6 FTE jail employees. Does this help fall in line with one of your strategic goals about future civil staffing, anticipating a courthouse and that type of thing? And does it have any impact on whether the jail has the ability to maintain all of its beds? In other words, keep all of its beds open? Is there a staffing problem that this would help address?
So I can tell you the 6 additional deputies that we're asking for here are for security deputy posts within the jail. So this is not for projected courthouse plans. It's separate. It's really to meet that 17 security deputy positions recommended in the staffing study. So the 6 for the levy-funded positions get us partway there. This additional 6 will get us 12 of the 17 that we need for Captain Eby.
Outstanding. And then lastly, just some clarification, and perhaps Administrator Schmidt can help me with this. The 5 positions that Nancy was talking about, bringing the total to 494 at about $588,000. Is this something that the board needs to address here? And maybe you could help me better understand what the discrepancy is and how we reconcile it.
Yes, so if the Budget Committee, when you do your deliberations later tomorrow and all day or Thursday, if you agree to this, we would make it part of the formal motion you approve, because this will be upping the total county budget by whatever the amount is, and we'll formally approve it there. So we will take action on this, if you agree, Thursday.
Thank you. Thank you.
Point of clarification, Chair, if I may. That will reduce contingency within the levy that is currently presented in this budget. So there will not be funds from outside sources that will be covering that. It's completely absorbed by the levy itself.
It would just be a shift of.
Correct.
And also, just to clarify just a little bit farther, because I see people with confused faces. So these were part of the original levy. It was just in accounting for the new positions, 5 got left out. So those were part of the levy that went to the ballot. These are the positions that the voters voted on. It's just more of it's a clerical error on our part that we did not put them into this year's budget.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Savas, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I did.
Question?
I did. So my question is,
And then we have Chair
what do you
Smith.
actually, you have all these vacant positions, levy and all that. What do you actually think you can actually fill in a year's time?
All of them. Well, maybe not a year's time, but we are,
There it is.
yeah. So we are on pace for hiring at least 30 again. So I anticipated questions about what our staffing levels currently are. So we have 32 openings, 7 in patrol. We have 2 folks on conditional offer. 3 are assigned in our backgrounds. We have 12 in the queue to be assigned. We have 20 patrol deputies in training right now. 15 of those should turn out by the end of this year. So we are doing well. We have 8 jail vacancies. We have 6 assigned to background investigators. 5 are in the queue to be assigned. We have 7 currently in training. In investigations, we have 11 openings. We have 3 rehire folks that are currently retired and working back, which is fantastic for us. We have 2 unconditional offer. We have 2 assigned in background investigators, and then 6 for civil. We have 2 rehire folks down there, and we have 4 openings. So we are, I think, well on our way to staff up. We have a great process in place, so I think we can get there. We are in better shape than most law enforcement agencies, and I'm confident we're going to be able to get there. We can have as many openings as we want. If we don't get the right people in the right places, it's going to be challenging, but I'm confident we can get there.
Yeah, well, with attrition, people either retiring or people that are moving on, what's that average loss in staffing per year?
So I anticipated that as well. So I just wanted to give you an idea of how many folks retired in the last couple of years. So in 2020, we had 17 sworn positions who retired. In 2021, we had 22 sworn retired. And with that, those vacancies that I showed you are actually pretty good. And these retirees, I've mentioned this before, we had a big group of folks who were hired all together. This was anticipated, but it was still a challenging environment to recruit and get folks over to us. We're all competing, law enforcement, we're all competing against each other to get the most qualified folks. So having a good wage program, compensation packaging, thinking outside the box. I can tell you that we recently did a lateral detective hire, which was probably the first in Oregon. We hired 4 very qualified, seasoned detectives here from the state of Oregon, and hopefully that probably will start a trend. But we are going to benefit by having folks with experience coming directly over to detectives, which has never been done before. And so we thank, our union for working with us on that, and with county HR, it was outside the box thinking. But those are the things that we have to do to stay on the edge and compete and get folks over here. The Sheriff's Office remains a very good place to work. We have a great reputation in the state of Oregon. So thank you all, for your support of law enforcement and of the community.
Well, thank you for keeping that reputation up. Mr. Karn and then Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Chair Park. Sheriff Brandenburg, 2 quick questions. So from the initial point of offer for employment, how long does it take to get somebody on the road?
So does that include the 18 months? Yeah, so it's 18 months for a brand-new person, which is why qualified laterals are so much more appealing. However, we don't want to hire all laterals because in 15, 20 years from now, we'll have an excess of laterals, or 10 years from now. So a mix is great, 18 months for brand-new folks.
Gotcha. Okay. And then so for when you hire back, somebody's going to retire and you give a contract offer, hire back, how long, I know there's probably rules as it relates to PERS, can you keep that employee? How long can you offer them employment?
Yeah, so actually, hirebacks, they're less expensive for us to hire, and they can work back until the end of 2024, according to the new PERS rules. That'll be readdressed in 2024. I'm assuming PERS will probably decide to keep that around. That's helping with offset PERS costs. It's been a pretty successful program.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Fisher, I see you have your card up also. Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
So I hear anecdotally, because I've talked to some folks that are very interested and excited to apply to Clackamas County and choose Clackamas County for a variety of reasons to work in law enforcement. One concern that I have, and I don't know how real the concern is, but you hear about contract negotiations in Portland and that they're really trying to increase compensation. And then I've heard also that our overall compensation package remains competitive, but the amount of what you take home in your paycheck, there may be a difference there for newer recruits. And so I'm just interested if you could opine on that, and are we in the best position possible to recruit new deputies?
So I think that's a really great question. And I think, so if you look at our base wage, I think it is lower than some in the area. But you do have to look at total compensation, and that's one of the things that we struggle with when we are trying to bring brand new people on, because brand new people don't necessarily get all the benefits of all the benefits. But overall, we are very competitive. But I think that is something that we are concerned about. It's something that we've been talking with the county administrator about, talking with our human resources about, and I think it is something that probably will come up in next contract negotiations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, just FYI, we are back on our time schedule again, so we have just a couple minutes, so we want to end this discussion with Commissioner Smith.
Real quick, what is the cost of a new gun for our new recruits, and do they have to buy their holster, belt?
Excuse me, what is the cost of a new gun? Do they have to buy a holster and a belt too, I assume? And all the other goodies that are on it?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Smith. Shane Strangfield, Captain of the Sheriff's Office, assigned to the training division for the record. A cost of a gun is anywhere from $500, $600, $700, depending on gun that they choose. They do, as the sheriff said, have some options when they come aboard. That is just a firearm. Availability is an issue with firearms as well. So that is something we've addressed at the Sheriff's Office, to have some firearms available for new hires until they can get their own gun in. Sometimes they're just not in stock. And that also goes for equipment in general. The supply issues also are hitting us. So we're keeping stores on hand internally to address some of those issues for people that need gear and equipment that they can't even purchase right now. And then when they get their gear and equipment in, we do an exchange with them for what they took from the Sheriff's Office right now. So overall, I would say it's about $1,500 to $2,000, depending on cost and supply and demand, for out of pocket for a new hire for gun and equipment out of their own pocket.
Thank you. I think that's really important. I can see why that would be a deterrent for some people, especially if you have families. Just a point of order, adding up the figures that Sheriff Brandenburg gave me, a new deputy coming on, the cost of that without salary and benefits is $125,400. Now, the public has told us time and time again that they value public safety as the #1 issue that government can provide. And I'm telling all the folks out there that tell us to do this, we have heard you. However, there is a great cost involved. And so there are limited funds in the world, in America, in Oregon, and even in Clackamas County. We have limited funds, but I believe it's the duty of this Budget Committee and the Board of County Commissioners to prioritize what we are going to spend those limited funds on. And I really thank this group for coming forward and being very open and transparent in your budget presentations today.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, agreed. Thank you very much. We're going to move on now.